Okay, so we're going to talk about the 7 Years' War, which was called the French and Indian War until recently, and now it's called both, which is confusing. And really, the French and Indian War is what we called it here on this continent. It was called the 7 Years' War in general. Question for somebody, Spencer. Are you ready for a question?
Oh, yeah. Ask Matt.
No. Stop.
I know.
Why do you think that the first three wars, there's these three wars before this decisive fourth war, why do you think that they're called William, Anne, and George's?
Because that's who was the monarch at the time.
That's who was the monarch at the time. By the way, for people watching this, I'm wearing this really foolish outfit because it's Tropical Tuesday.
I like that.
Just going to put that out there. I know it looks like it's not Cotton Candy Tuesday, but it's Tropical Tuesday. Anyway, who wins those three wars? First of all, who's fighting in them and who wins them? Who's fighting in them and who wins them, Jamie?
The French.
The French are fighting against
And the natives
against the English. Nope, these first three wars are basically,
the
it's
first
good.
three.
It's just France, look at me, look up. It's France against England, and they're mostly fought in Europe. A little fun fact, France and England hate each other for centuries, and then in the 20th century they become allies. I'm not going to say they're BFFs, but yeah, they are allies in World War I and World War II. But there was a bitter rivalry there. In all of these wars, the French get their butts kicked by the English. So the French are getting their butts kicked by the British in all three of these wars. What role did the colonists play in this? You ready for this? Here's the role we play. We lose some concessions, and we're mad about it. Resentment's starting to build because we're having things that England is giving stuff away that doesn't matter to them but matters to the colonists after these wars. And so we're resenting our own government, which is sort of an American theme. Is it a theme today? Are there a lot of people in this country that resent our own government? Yes.
I'm included in that.
Yep, somebody in here is included. Remember, we're taken, so don't say anything crazy. The French and Indian War, 7 Years' War, and I'm reading on my sheet now. Look at it. Look at it. The French and Indian War was the North American conflict in a larger imperial war between Great Britain and France known as the 7 Years' War. The French and Indian War began in 1754 and ended with a treaty in Paris in 1763. The war resulted in enormous territorial gains for England. I want you to look at this map, and I want to show you the enormous territorial gains. There they are. France is in purple. England is in green. Put the phone on.
Wow.
France is in purple, England's in green. What's going on here on this map, Madden?
They took a lot of the land.
Yep. The control. Does France have any, by 1763, anything in North America?
No.
No, it's gone. Now they will get Spanish Louisiana back, even though they conceded it, and then they'll sell it to Jefferson in 1803. But if you look at this, they don't have anything. Spencer.
Oh my gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, that's what I was going to say. After the British get that land, like they take it,
Yeah.
there are obviously still French people in those territories.
Oh, absolutely. Quebec is
I was
French
gonna
still
say-
today.
I was going to say,
Of
Canada's
course.
still French to this day.
Yes, this is still, and this is why. And it's crazy because they still have this strong French culture and French language.
Right.
And yeah, it's been since 1763 that wasn't the case.
They
It
have
shows
that
you
French
how
culture
deeply
and that
rooted.
French language, but the English monarch is still their head of state.
Yes. Well, now, yeah.
Because Queen Elizabeth is the head of state of Canada.
Because the United Kingdom. But Justin Trudeau's the Prime Minister, which is all of Canada. And this is interesting. There's a really interesting dynamic there that think of how many French must have already been there for that French heritage to survive hundreds of years. And yet it did. But what you need to understand is the threat of the French and the Spanish in Florida has been removed by British triumphant victory. And this becomes something really important in why I'm taping this and what I need you to understand. So open up the book. Couple things that come out of this. Let's go to 87 together. I'm going to kind of jump around here and sort of survey this quickly. In the beginning of the war is basically fought over here because, follow me on the map, the French are mad because English colonists, with their growing population, are crossing into French territories where there's also American Indians in what we would call the Ohio Valley, which we mean places like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in western New York, in Ohio. And so here's what happens. You ready for this? Here's what happens. Look on 87, and I'll just sort of sum this up. Hoping to stop the French from completing work on Fort Duquesne, which is Pittsburgh, and win control of the Ohio River Valley, the governor of Virginia sends a small militia, which is an armed force, under the command of a new young colonel named George Washington. After a small little tiny victory, Washington's troops were forced to surrender to a superior force of Frenchmen and their American Indian allies on July 3rd, 1754. How crazy is that? Washington was forced to surrender. Our greatest military hero in his first real battle was forced to surrender. And you know, he could have all but given up at that point. Luckily for us, he didn't. This was the beginning of a war that went badly for the British in the beginning, but eventually led by General Braddock. Eventually, this becomes a decisive war for Great Britain. And Benjamin Franklin recognizes early that the colonists need to help win this war. That the colonists need to help their own country fight this war. And that's why he draws that print that's hanging on the door there, that join or die flag. That join or die flag, because he's trying to get, and he has a meeting in Albany of all places. Where's Albany, Dom? No, other direction. So Buffalo's in one direction to the west, 2 hours, and 2 hours to the east of where we are right now is Albany, New York, in a car ride. All right? Albany is the capital of New York State, and the Albany Plan of Union is Benjamin Franklin's attempt at colonial unity. And you can write this in the margin at the bottom of 87. It failed. It failed. It never actually happened, because each colony was concerned of their own concerns and not of, like the theme of the Positivity Project this week, teamwork. They weren't concerned with teamwork. They were like 13 of their own separate little worlds. The objective was accomplished. Quebec surrendered to General Wolfe in 59, and the British took Montreal in 1760. Immediate effects of the war on 88. Britain's victory in the 7 Years' War was a turning point in all of this. Okay? For one thing, it gave Great Britain unchallenged supremacy amongst Europeans in North America, as you can see with the map behind me. The second thing is it challenged the autonomy of the American Indians. It established Britain as the dominant navy in the world, and it meant that this is really important, that the colonists no longer faced a threat of France, Spain, or really the American Indians significantly, because now they've got this power. So I want you guys at the bottom of 88, there's two really important paragraphs. I want you to put a big star and arrow on these two paragraphs, and then I want you to close read them. And I'll give you about a minute and a half, 90 seconds to close read these two paragraphs on the bottom of 88. And then I'm going to ask a couple of you a question. when you're done, just lift your head up so I know when everybody's done. I'm going to put 2 people on the spot. Braden, what is the British view of the war? Sum it up. Yep. And the colonies have become a big, giant financial burden. So Britain looks at the colonies like, your military sucks, you cost us a lot of money, we had to come over here and defend you, and now we feel like we've got to get troops, keep them here. You're nothing but a headache. We're not making money anymore off of you. How about the colonists, Devin? What was their point of view? How did they feel after the war? They were what? No, how did they feel? What was their point of view about their military performance? They thought they were great. We were like, hey, Mom, look at us. We did great. We beat France. We beat the American Indians. We're so great. We helped win. Aren't you proud of us? Look what we did, Mom. And England's like, proud of you? You're nothing but a financial burden now. I've never been more annoyed at you. Now I've got to keep troops here. This war cost me so much money. I used to have a chart that showed expenditures. Britain's spending, in some cases, 5 times more money it cost them from 1754 to 1761. And the reason is this war was expensive. To move massive armies, massive navies across an ocean, to be able to feed them and clothe them and give them ammunition is very expensive for England. So what you see here, the really important thing you see here, this is really important, is you see the end of salutary neglect at the top 89. You know how Britain left us alone to self-rule? Those days are over with. Now are you starting to get an understanding? So what's going to happen? How is England going to make up for this money? Where are we going with this in 3.3 topic? How is England, raise your hand and tell me, how is England going to make this money? What are some examples? Emma? Taxation. Stamp Acts. Tea Acts. Sugar Acts. Taxes on lead. Taxes on paper and legal documents. Taxes on playing cards. Taxes on everything. That's how Britain is going to generate lost money to protect us. The leader of Great Britain at this point in history is an idiot. His name is George III. He's going to get proven to be an idiot. We're going to talk about him a lot in the next 4 weeks of this course. And he's got Parliament and the Whigs on his side. And he's like, you know what, we're going to start to, the word in business today would be micromanage. Let me give you a little example here, because I think that this is a good example that might resonate with you. Let's pretend that you got a classmate that when you're in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, they have no rules or structure in their house. They got a single parent that's raising them, and they're allowed to stay out till 1, 2 in the morning and nobody cares. And you say to your parents, but Johnny stays out till 1 on school nights, and your mom or your dad is like, I don't care what Johnny does. Johnny's not my kid. You're not staying out past 10, right? Then let's say Johnny's in like 11th grade, and now that parent has a new boyfriend. Mom has a boyfriend, so mom's never really given a crap. She's let Johnny basically raise himself, but her new boyfriend is strict, and he's like got some control in the house now, so the rules have changed. And so now what's happening? Mom's saying, we've decided, honey, you need to be home at 10 tonight. Now, Maybe a kid that always had a curfew on a school night can handle that. Maybe a kid that always had a curfew on a school night can handle that. Technical difficulties, sorry. Sorry. But Johnny's not going to be able to handle that, is he? Why? Because he's so used to the lax way. You know, my dad always had these little expressions. He used to say that you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. He kind of used it like if you say mean words, it's hard to you can't make them go away. I feel like that's true here in a sense too, though. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You've already been a parent that neglected your child. You can't go back so what's Johnny going to say? Now you want to be mom? Now you're going to be a parent? Where have you been the last 5 years?
He's gonna give a big F you.
Yeah, a big giant, and that's where the colonists are at. Do you see the metaphor that I did there? The colonists basically are saying, now you're going to micromanage us and tax us and tell us how to rule? You've left us alone for a century. Now you're here? George III takes it a step further. What he does is, he draws an imaginary line on the Appalachian Mountains. You can see this line. He calls it the Proclamation Line of 1763. He tells the colonists, you can't cross the line. The reason is because of Pontiac's rebellion. See, Chief Pontiac fights back against British colonial settlers that have encroached. You know what that word means, encroachment? That have encroached, moved onto American Indian land. The chief rebels against them. Who steps in? The British military. And then George III says, I can't keep paying money to fight American Indians, to fight Indians. So what does he do? He tells them they can't cross the line. Do they listen?
No.
No, they're Americans. They don't listen. So let me show you. I'm going to give you a handout. There are boxes. Riley asked me about these. Riley, I'm going to give you a hard copy. This is an assignment that I have due tomorrow, but it really will be due in totality on Thursday. You're only doing the front tomorrow. I want to explain how you're doing it. So open up to 3.3 while I hand you this out. Good. You can do it in Google Classroom if you want to get your notebook out. I made a video, the second video about this. Those videos that are on there I made about this, were they torture for you, Nick? You can watch me of the past. I'm handing out papers here. People watching what they watch a review. Yeah, you can do it right down there.
Matt, you want to turn on the camera? Duties. Oh, yeah, you definitely.
So let's look at this together. Okay, I'm back. No talking. Let's look at this together. Everyone have a copy except Dom? Me. And Nick and Elijah. Mr. Rel. Story of my life. Sorry. Okay, let's read this. Topic 3.3, the path to revolution. This is a very important sheet. That's why I made hard copies. So let's look at it. The path to revolution. Read it at the top. Steps to revolution. So what I need you to recognize, this is really important, another analogy. You ready? Is that us revolting against our own country doesn't just happen. It's a series of events. It's like, think about it like a breakup. A breakup on the surface might look like it just happens, right? Oh, they broke up. Why? Oh, he cheated on her. Well, you don't know the context. There's 10 things that happened before leading up to the shots heard around the world, like Lexington and Concord. So this whole sheet is the context of why we broke up with our own government. Okay? Now, I set this up across and up and down. I need you to follow this or you're not going to be able to do it. It's important. So start with the proclamation line. It goes chronologically in order. And what it is that you're going to fill in the year and an explanation in the box for the event. So under proclamation line, is the year already filled in? Yeah, because it is a year. And then I want you to write next to it in that box under British accent, George the Third, George 1, 2, 3, George 3, George the Third. It's I, because it's Roman numeral.
I'm confused. Where?
Okay, so there's a British action. It says proclamation line of 1763. I want you to define that in the box.
British action. Why only says
Right,
British action?
political.
Oh. What?
That's okay. I want you to define it as George III drew a line at the Appalachian Mountains, or at the mountains. Then the word rationale, which means reason. Why did he take this action? I already told you why. Why did he take this action, Nick? Why did George III draw the line? He didn't want us to what?
He didn't want us to piss off the natives.
Didn't want us to get mad at the natives, to have to fight them because it cost money.
Yeah, the funny thing was though, the British claimed their land.
There is some irony there. We realize that it's always a big element.